Another artist we looked at this week was Alexander Apostol. And what he does is he uses erasure to remove parts from buildings. He removes the functionality. He removes the windows, the doors. So what a building normally is, it has some kind of function, might be a house, it might be a place you go into for work. It no longer can do that function because of what he's removed. But it's all done non-destructively. This is something I like to do a lot as well. A project I've been working on for some time is I photograph old buildings around Troy, Albany, and then I use Photoshop to kind of restore the buildings. So this is the way this building actually looked here, but then I use Photoshop to make it look like it's, not damaged as it is. And I do this through making multiple still images of it, and then I convert it into a video file, so we get this kind of slow emerging. And so in this one here, I'll show you the way the building actually looks right now. The way the building looks right now is all of the windows have been boarded up with bricks. So I took a photograph of that, and then I took the windows above it and I cloned them in, something we'll be talking about this week, to sort of imagine what would this building have looked like originally. So this is maybe the way it looked originally, and then I slowly morph it into the way it is now through a video file. So I really like doing this kind of thing. This is a building in North Troy. This is the way I imagine it used to look, and this is the way that it currently looks now. You can kind of see the difference. So all of this is done non-destructively. So over in Photoshop, let's talk about some cloning tools. Now, first I want to mention how Photoshop has these options like remove background. There are a lot of these simple AI things built into Photoshop. They don't work that well, so you still need to learn how to correctly clone, is what it's called, on your own, and to learn how to do it the way I'm asking, which is non-destructively, meaning all of your edits should go on a new layer. So we can talk about some of those things, but let's just go back to the basics and start with what is the clone tool. So over here in your panel, your tool panel, you should see the clone tool. And the way you should always work with this is by cloning whatever edits you want onto a new layer. So first I'm going to make a new layer, and then with the clone tool selected, I am going to go up into my options bar, and where it says sample, make sure it says current and below. If it's on just current, then I can't sample any parts of my flower because the current layer is blank. So it needs to be on current and below. So this is really kind of just like making a selection, except for you paint instead of using your selection tools. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, or the Option key if you're on a Mac, so Alt for PC. And notice how my selection brush becomes, my diameter becomes more like a bullseye. And so that is how I set where I want to start copying from. So let's just say, for example, I want to copy this sunflower here. So I have the Alt key or Option key if you're on a Mac selected, and then I'm just going to click and let go. Let go of both my mouse and the key. And if you notice, as I'm dragging around, that little sample of where I just clicked is actually in the diameter of my brush. I'll just make it bigger so it's easier for you to see. All right, now I'll make it smaller. And so now I can just start painting, and it's kind of like I'm just making a copy selection of that flower. But the main thing is I am putting it on its own layer. So now I could take this, I could move it around, put it in different spots, I could rotate it, I could make it smaller, and my original image is completely unedited. So I can turn that off, and we see it's not part of my original image. So I'll do one more. Let's make a new layer, my blank layer here, take my clone stamp tool, make sure it says current and below, and again it's Alt if you're on a PC, it's Option if you're on a Mac, and I click and grab my edit sample, and then I'll just take this one and paint it in down here so you can just see what I'm doing, and just paint that guy in. And if I took too much, I can always go and I could take the eraser tool, for example, and just kind of touch that up. And now I have that move tool. I could take this guy and put it somewhere else up here. I could rotate it. I could do other things to it. All right, so that's the foundation of this tool, of the clone stamp tool. And then I commit up here. All right, so let's talk about other ways you might use this. So here is an image of a building that I took. Let me just zoom out. Oh, sorry. And I want to do a couple of things. I want to get rid of this no parking sign, and I want to get rid of some of the spots on here. So this time we'll compare it with Content Aware Fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection of one of these spots on the pavement that I want to get rid of. Now if you notice in this option bar down here, there's a paint bucket, and if I click on that, I have an option called Content Aware Fill. What that will do is it tries to fill it with the content that's around it. And it's giving me some options. I'm going to say OK. And I will deselect so you can see what it did, and let's zoom in. And it did an okay job. There's some artifacts here I don't really like, kind of left a ring. But what I really don't like is it put it on my original layer. So now I have altered permanently my original layer, and I don't like that. So I don't want to do that method. So I just pointed that out in case you discover it and you're wondering, why am I not using it? Well, we're going to do it in a slightly different way. Let me pull up my history panel here, and I'm going to undo that. Just zoom out here. Okay, so this time we're still going to use Content Aware Fill, but instead I am going to right click on it and choose Content Aware Fill. So that's the only difference. I'm right clicking on my selection, Content Aware Fill, and now I get this pop-up box that's kind of guessing where I want to pull content from to be able to fill in here. And I think this one did a lot of a better job. If you're not happy with what it has selected, you can take the paintbrush up here and you could pick a different area to sample from. Make sure, let's see, I'm on the negative, I'll put on the plus. Okay, so now I could say, oh, actually I want you to sample more from over here, and it will sample from over there. But what I like about this option is that I have the option to make sure it outputs to a new layer. So now I can hit apply if I want to just see it, and if I'm okay with it, I hit OK, and if I didn't like it, I would hit cancel. Okay, so it's not perfect, which is why I want you guys to be aware of how to use these things, but also how to go back and touch things up with the clone stamp tool. So I'll do another one, but I need to make sure I'm on the right layer. So now I'm selected on the layer that has just that edit. So this is non-destructive. I go back to my background, and now I'm going to select, oops. Why does it think I'm not select anything? I'm going to select this one here. Okay, right click on it, Content Aware Fill. And I don't feel like that's doing the greatest job in the world of removing it, so I might say, sample, take away from some spots it's trying to sample. Definitely don't want to sample from up here. Not sure why it's even trying to grab that, but you see these things are not perfect. So I'm going to try to just give it some pavement to sample from. So the green is what it's trying to sample from. All right, and now that I got rid of all of that stuff and I look over here in my preview, I can see it's doing a much better job at sampling. So yours might not, honestly, on different computers, I've noticed that I get different results. Here, when I click on the Content Aware Fill, it's not always filling it with green. So on my PC here, it seems to do that. On the Mac, it doesn't. So if you don't have any spot here that's green, don't worry. Just take the sample brush, make sure it's in the positive, and kind of paint some green area around the spot that you want it to fill with the kind of content you want it to fill with. So similar looking pavement. And if you're happy with it, click OK. If you don't like it, hit cancel. And I think it did a pretty good job. And again, it put it on the background layer. All right, now let's look at this no parking, private parking, private property, no parking. So this one, I don't feel that ContentAware does a particularly good job. Maybe sometimes you just have to try to sample it multiple times. I also need to make sure I'm on my background. If I try to do it now, because I'm on this layer here, it won't work. So select my background, I have my selection, right click, go to ContentAware Fill. And actually, okay, it's not a horrible job. It's really not a horrible job. I just have to bring back the line that is missing. So we could do that. I could hit OK. And now I'm going to deselect. So, and make sure I'm on that layer. I should be on the layer that has that edit. Just bring it back here. And now is an example of when I might combine with what I know from the Clone Stamp tool. So take the Clone Stamp tool, for example. I'm going to sample. So again, Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac. I'm going to take from the line all the way over here. And then you can see I'm carrying that sample around. I'm going to line it up and then paint it in. And I am doing this on the same layer that has the other edit. It's all there together, and I think that's okay. All right, so sometimes you might have to combine and do more than one together. All right, so ContentAware Fill, right-clicking, making sure all of your selections are on new layers, and Clone Stamp, but make sure you create a new layer and current and below are selected.